What's up guys, Noah or Quezzy here, and in today's class I'm going to be showing you how to create these abstract skull posters in C4D and Photoshop. We're going to start off in C4D with a skull model and add a few displacers and materials to it to get a pretty standard looking skull render. We're going to take that to Photoshop and use the Liquify tool to kind of make it more interesting with some drip effect. We're going to clean it up, add a few more stock images and effects, add our text and add a small color correction and get our finished poster. All the techniques in this video are pretty simple, so if you're a beginner, this class is definitely for you. You'll be able to follow along, no problem. But I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's just go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so the things you need for this class, first of all you need a C4D Lightroom of some sort. There's plenty of free Lightrooms out there that you can Google and find one. You could just set up your own lights real quick as well. I'm using my own light studio, which I sell in my store if you guys really want to go all out for it. So check that out on my Selfie. Also, I'm going to be using a skull as my model, and I downloaded mine from CG Trader. Just typed in skull and set the price to free, and this is the one I used. There's also a snake one that I used before, which is pretty cool as well. So you can use those, or you can use any other object you like. And then you just drag it into C4D, and I'll show you that when we get there. So for the materials, I'm actually going to include a download to both of these materials to make it as easy as possible for you guys to follow along. So check the class info down below for an attachment with the materials. To walk you through the materials real quick though, this is just a black material that is just a spectral reflection, which if you've watched my two most recent classes I've used this material, the reflection, or like the spectral reflection, isn't as important, but the normal reflection is. So yeah, it just happens to be the material that I had here and it looked good, so that's why I went with it. The more important material is this one, and basically this is a material for my V7 pack. If you already have it, then great. But it's a colorful material with a clip-in distort on it to kind of make it pop a little more, and then it has the luminance to make it glow, which is really important because this will make it look really good in Photoshop and like really brighten it up and make it look neat. So it's got the luminance of the texture and then a pointless reflection kind of, but it's there. So those are the materials. Be sure to check the download for them, and then we can go ahead and get started. So let's get going with the render. I will hide this and let's do it. So you want to open up whatever Lightroom you're using, add your materials in here from the download, and go ahead and add the skull model you downloaded, or skull models if you have multiple. I'm going to do the basic skull without the snakes because the snake one takes a little longer to load because it has more polygons. I'm going to delete the material on this. I'm going to select it, Command C to copy, go to Window, let's go back to the Lightroom, and let's just paste it in here. And you can see it's way too small, so let's go to the scale and just really scale it up. Come on. Okay, that might be a little too much, but let's just bring it down. Yeah, slightly smaller. There we go. And I'm gonna leave it front facing for now, but we're gonna be rotating this here soon. So this is the first setup one, and this is the only one that's gonna have the chrome on it. So add the chrome material to that, and you can see we've basically created a crystal skull from Indiana Jones now. But we want to make it a little more interesting, so let's duplicate it, Command C, Command V, and add the colored material to the second one. And then on that second one, we want to go to our displacers and get a displacer, add that to the colored one, and let's hop into the displacer. A big important thing here is to come to height, and we want to do 1 or -1. So for now I'm going to do 1, and let's go to shading and get a noise, and you can see this displaces it and it looks really funky. We need to open that little thumbnail, go to our noise, and let's make it 700, and that's a little better. maybe even go down to 500. Depending on the noise you use, you might want to mix it up. So for example, if I open this and instead of noise I do VL noise, okay, that's about the same. But if we do Voronoi 1, you can see we might have to bump up the global scale to 1000 instead, and that looks better. But let's, for the sake of consistency, stay with normal noise and 500 scale, and we can mess with the seed here. And actually, that one I like a lot, 671. So I'm trying to find a good balance of the color and the normal crystal skull look, and I think that's a pretty good balance. And then since it's a skull, I didn't want both sockets to be just boring blanks. This one's kind of not, it has a little material. So what I'm going to do is come in here and get a sphere, and I put it in this eye before, but we'll put it in this eye for this. So let's set that up in front, gotta make it a lot smaller. Actually, make it a little bigger to fill the socket. There we go. Add the purple material to that. Boom, perfect. And I'm going to bring that sphere down just so it's out of the way here, and we can duplicate the displaced skull one more time. Command C, Command V. And I'm going to come out of the camera view that I have set up here for the render. And let's come to kind of a side view. Select this skull and bring it back. And what we want to do is get the scale it down a little bit, and then bring it up a little bit. And then on the displacer, let's go to Object, Height, and put that way up to like 100. And then let's go back to our view here and see what we got. So I think that's looking pretty cool. Let's select all of this stuff, and I'm going to press Alt G to put it in a null so we can just easily rotate everything like so. Yeah, and we're getting there. I'm going to do something like that, rotate it a little more. Let's come into this or this second displacer. Let's go in and actually increase the global scale to maybe 750. And okay, we're gonna have to move it back a little further. Shoot. And then maybe move it up slightly to the right. Okay, I'm liking this. So we have all this on the back and kind of on the side, and then the front is pretty clear. It has like these purple spots coming in, but that's what we want. And I think this is looking pretty good. If I go to my render settings, by the way, I have object glow, illumination, and ambient occlusion on. And I'm going to be rendering this as a PNG alpha channel check, so it's a transparent background. And make sure you have a pretty decent size. This might be a little too big, but like 1080p-ish size is the way to go. And if I give this a test render, it should look pretty neat. It's not going to look as good as it will once we go to Photoshop and kind of increase the contrast or whatever, but it should look pretty neat. Here's what the render's looking like. It's looking pretty wicked. And you can see the spectral on our reflected material doesn't really come through. I mean, it slightly comes through there, but it's also reflecting the purple and like in the nose here. But yeah, this looks pretty wicked. Pretty happy with this. I might change the rotation slightly before we go to Photoshop. Kind of want it slightly more dead on, and maybe we go with more of an angle. Maybe we cock his head. We'll do something like that. Let's go ahead, save it to our desktop or wherever you'd like to save it. And Now we'll head over to Photoshop. You can see that C4D stuff was not too difficult. Pretty basic stuff there. Skull 4. Let's go ahead and render this out. Alright, so now we're in Photoshop, and this is sort of what we're going to try to recreate here. There's going to be two things for you guys to download, by the way. It's going to be the background texture and this form stock that I have from a pack. There'll actually be a couple of these for you guys, so you guys can use whichever one you like. But anyway, once you come to Photoshop, let's go to File, New, and create a letter size. You can create any dimension you want for your poster. I'm going to unlock the background by double clicking and pressing Command I to make it black. I'm going to go over here and make my colors black and white, and let's go ahead and find our render download, or our render Skull 4 for me. Add that in here. I'm going to hold Alt, increase this size a little bit, and center it up a little bit like so. I'm going to add these two downloads over into the file a while so I can close this. And I'm going to put them at the bottom here. I'm not going to touch them yet because we have a few things to set up. So I'm going to right click, rasterize the skull. And I'm going to click the background layer and get the guides. If you don't have the guides, press Command R and the rulers will pop up. I'm going to get one from the left side and it should click in the middle. And then I'm going to press Command T on the skull and yeah, okay, it is centered. I'm going to create a new layer above our render, and I'm going to alt click on it to make it a clipping mask. I'm going to get a brush, or I'm going to get the brush tool and then get a soft brush. And with black selected and probably like 1,000 size brush, go along the bottom here just to darken it up a bit. Set it to overlay and then maybe about 75. And we can also do the same thing again, but with white at the top, so maybe like right there. Set it to overlay and maybe a little lower, like 50% this time. Yeah, cool. Now we'll set up the background first, and since we brought in this material or our texture, we're gonna go ahead and add that, and it looks something like this. Basically, when it's on normal, 100%. It's pretty extreme. It's like a plastic, like a dirty plastic texture. But we're gonna set it to screen and then like 40-ish%. I think it was actually at like 37. And that's gonna be our background. And then above that, you wanna create a new layer. Get the brush tool. Again, you want white and a soft brush. Increase the size a bit, so we're at about 1800. Click behind, maybe click behind again. And we have that white behind, and we can set that to overlay, or we could leave it at normal or even screen. Maybe we leave it at normal for now, and if it's a little too bright, we can change it. And I'm actually going to move it up slightly, and let's change the opacity to 75. Cool. And now our poster's set up, and let's go ahead and get into like the interesting effects and stuff. So go to the very top layer and create a new layer, and now we want to get two colors from the render. So I'm going to click here, and I'm definitely going to get this cyan slash teal, and then I'm going to get a purplish or pink, and I think purple's the better bet since there's more of it, and we'll click that and boom, cool. Let's get the soft brush, and since we have teal selected first, we'll go over a couple teal spots. So this is a big teal spot over here, up here, and then we'll do one in the top and the bottom corner. Switch your color then, and let's do the same with purple. Do purple here and purple there, bottom, top, cool. And we'll set that to screen and then decrease the opacity to maybe 30. Let's zoom out and see how that's looking. Yeah, I'm gonna go with 35. I'm happy with that. We can always erase the spots along the outside if they're looking a little too out of place, which right now they are, but I'm thinking once we get a little further, it might look a little better. Let's go ahead and add the form stock, which is this guy. And if your layers aren't on normal, be sure to just set it to screen or lighten. I think screen looks a little better. And this one was originally yellow, and I changed it to pink. To change the color, just press Command U on that layer, and you can mess around with the color. And actually, I'll go a little, I'm gonna go -5 to make that a little more purple. And I'm gonna set that with like wherever my big blob of color is, which is on the left side of my skull. So let's set it up here, and then I'm gonna add a layer mask. So click down here, add a layer mask, get the brush tool again, flip to black, and this is gonna be a little smaller, and we're just gonna erase some bits. So I don't want it here on the skull. I don't want it here. Maybe erase it there. So it's like in and out. There's some parts here behind and then up in front, but it's not too overwhelming. And when you're zoomed out and pretty far, it's a very subtle effect, but I think just adds a little more to that big bubble that's going on. Now, before we get to the drip effect, we want to do one thing to the skull. So select the skull, get the rectangle tool, and find the part with the most color, which for me is right here. And select a long bit. Actually, I'm going to come here and select a long bit of this, like so, and press Command C, go to the top, press Command V, and you'll have this square of color. And we're going to use this as like a little cheeky border. So let's put it up at the top here, duplicate it, bring it down, and we're going to need one more. Maybe rotate this one. See if we can blend it in a little bit. Yeah, cool. Maybe this one, let's press Command T and flip it horizontal. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. That's our border. There's a little too much of the cyan going on there. So I'm gonna take this and overlap that, and then maybe we take this bottom one and move it up, and okay, I like that a lot better. And let's select all of these, press Command E to merge them into one layer, and we can bring them down below, at least down below the color screens, and then duplicate that with Command J, press Command T, rotate it so it's horizontal now, and put this at the bottom or the top, whichever one you prefer. I think I'm going to go to the bottom here, and let's actually rotate it this way. Okay, I like that. And if you don't like that hard edge, you could come and let's get the pen tool, click, hold shift, click, and then erase this part. So we'll add a clipping mask, right click, fill, and fill it with black. And then I'll just delete it so we get like a sharp edge, and I think that looks a little better. And then we can slide this over. So those are just a couple borders. You could add more, you could do the whole thing like that. I just like the couple borders like so. But once you get that, we can come to our skull and do the dripping effect. So select your skull, let's go to filter and liquify. Let's get the basic liquify tool. I don't know what it's called, but it's the top one. And I just like to liquify everywhere that there is the color. So don't go too crazy, but kind of just mess around with some of these. And I like to follow parts of the skull. So like right here, I like to come and then go along the nose. Maybe follow a tooth here. Let's follow this line. Follow the jawline here. Okay, let's start with the dripping. So back here, do a little drip and then do a drip down. Alright, so I've been adding some drips. Let's increase the size and maybe come to this big spot and add a big drip. Not really a drip, but just give it some big movement. Like it's kind of melting. And then we can add another one here. Cool, so I'm happy with those drips. Let's go ahead and add, or go to the twirl tool now and kind of mess with some of these areas just to make them a little more interesting. I'm gonna come back and make this one a little more cool. Alright, so I'm happy with all those effects that I got going on there. You could also get crazy and make it real big and maybe do like the whole side of the face drip. Something like that. That's actually pretty wicked. I'm gonna stick with that. Let's see how that looks. Click OK when you're happy. And boom, we got our drippage going on. It looks pretty wild. I really like how it's looking though. And if you do this and you are not happy with the placement or whatever, like I'm not happy with the rotation right now, you can come in, select everything, just give it like a slight rotate. There, cool. Maybe rotate the form stock here as well. Cool. Now I'm gonna go right below the borders here and create another new layer, and we're just gonna get black and soft brush and maybe make this brush a little bigger and just darken up the top and bottom. Okay, and set it to overlay and 50%. I added some cool noise textures then above this, so if you create a new layer, get the rectangle tool and just fill it with either like black or white. Do a little square like that, press Command Delete to fill it, and then go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and yeah, this is like all the way up to 350 Gaussian, and click OK, and then you have this noise texture, and you can set it to like darken, lighten, overlay, which is what soft light, which is what I'm going to do, and this adds a slight bit of texture, so I'm going to put it here in this gap, duplicate it, put it up at the top here as well. And then you could duplicate it again for it to stand out a little more. That's up to you. I'm fine with the more subtle effect. But now we can move on to adding text. Alright, so let's add some text. Get the text tool. I selected the top layer, so this text will be above everything. Click and type in your text, whatever you want it to be. I just typed in drip here. And let's make it 200, that's 220 in size. It's a little big, but whatever. The font I used was Astra, which looks like this. And you can double click on that and come to your character settings and increase the spacing to like 200. If you don't have your character window, go to Window, Character, and it'll pop up. So you can use this as normal text, which is what I did. Like I put it off to the side here, maybe to the right or the left. But also I did a thing where if I duplicate this, hide one of them, I filled the whole document with the repeated text as a stroke. So let's fill up the text so it's like almost the same width as our document, but not really. And then set the fill to 0, double click, go to stroke, make the color white, set it to center, and then yeah, about 10 pixel in size is pretty good. Click OK, duplicate, bring it down, select both, duplicate, bring them down, duplicate, bring them down. So let's fill it like that. Select all of these and go to Layer, Distribute, Vertical Centers to evenly space it. Press Command E, that merges it into one layer. And then there's two things you could do with this. So if I duplicate it, so I have two. One is to bring it down below and have it as a background, like 20%. And then add a Liquify effect to it. Or you can have it smaller and have it like next to the render somewhere. So maybe over here into where all the color is. But you want to add this like cool liquify effect. So if I go to filter, liquify, and just get the normal move tool, you can barely see the text here. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but I see it, and you just want to do some slight drag, and then get some slight rotation. Okay, click OK, and then that's what it looks like. Okay, I might have pulled that one down a little too far, but if we do it to the background here, which by the way, I want this to be like 5% actually, I think that looks better. But let's go to filter, liquify, and maybe you can see that better, I don't know. We'll start with the twirl and twirl some of it. Actually, if you just use twirl, it doesn't look too bad, but let's get the move tool and maybe move this chunk down and then this chunk up. Cool, click OK, and then if I increase the opacity for you guys, it looks something like that. Set it back to 5%, and I'm gonna press Command T and just like rotate it, increase the size of it a bit, and that could be your background. You could do that, or you could do this one, or you could do both. I think I did both at one point. We'll keep both up though, why not? And then let's go ahead, bring this text back, and we'll put it to the top left, and then actually no, I don't know, we'll go top left, and then duplicate it. If you want text at the bottom, you can do that as well. So the other text I did was abstract, and we'll make that smaller. Actually, I want it to the left as well. I want it with this bar. And then duplicate that text one more time, and this is going to be the vertical text along this bar, which we're going to just do design Lizzie, and then this will be very small and very spaced out. So if you open up your characters panel again and then space it out to like 350, there you go. So I'm not happy with how these text elements are aligned right now. So, and I don't like how the drip text looks up here, so maybe I just not even use that and move my skull and stuff up. So if I grab all of these and just move it up, I think that would be the play, and I'd be happy with that. Although the top is looking like it's missing something, so I don't know. This would take some playing around with. Maybe if I make this smaller, I'll like it more. Yeah, you know, that's actually okay. But anyway, mess around with the elements. You can add more to it at this point. But this was the general setup for my poster. And once you're happy with it, go ahead and put everything into a group. And then duplicate with Command J and Command E to merge. And you can do something like filter, sharpen more on that. Just get things to stand out a little more. That texture gets a little too strong, but it's alright. Now we can move on to the final touches. So the final touches for this, we want to add a levels, and that's about it for the color correction. Basically just bring this guy in slightly, and then bring the right guy in slightly, and the color will really pop. And then if we go ahead to hue and saturation, the color scheme I have here with the purple, blue, pink is really easy to change. So if I go slightly up, you can see I bring out a little more pink, and that looks good. I can keep going, that even looks good. That looks good in my mind. The green, I mean, everything looks good when you have these colors. Maybe not so much here when you get the green, but you can see I can modify the hue to any one of these, and you can bump up the saturation, go crazy. Maybe even that looks pretty cool. Actually, kind of looks wicked, but yeah, you can mess around with this as much as you want. If you want to change individual colors, you can go from master to whatever. So if I go to magenta, I could just really change the magentas in here. Maybe I do that to bring in some of the crazy color, and that's not a bad look. But once you're happy, you're done, you can save it.